In this video we're going to talk about communication styles. So there's 3 different communication styles. There's aggressive, assertive and passive. Now if we know which style we're communicating from, we can see, is that helping us? Is it helpful? Is it unhelpful? And then we can think about, is there some things we might want to change about the way we communicate so that we perhaps maybe move towards a more assertive communication style. But if we recognise that we are in that assertive communication style most of the time, then it sounds like you're doing a really, really good job. What I want to just point out before we talk through the communication styles is there's no right or wrong way in communicating. You may have using these communication styles as a way of surviving, as just a necessary means to help you get to where you need to be in that moment in time. So there is no judgment here when we're covering these communication styles, okay? But what we recognise is that actually some of these communication styles might not serve us as well anymore, and we want to make some changes. So I'm going to talk through each of the communication styles, giving you a bit of a description and overview of what they look like. So as I'm talking them through, think about, is this ever been something that you've done in terms of how you've communicated with somebody else? And then we'll think about ways to avoid certain communication styles and gravitate towards more assertive communication style. So the first one to start off with is the aggressive style. So this could be defined as being too hard. So this is where you're expressing your needs, feelings, wants at the expense of the other person or at the expense of others. And you express your personal rights and ignore the rights of others, okay? So this is the sense of, I'm okay, you're not okay. I only care about me, I'm important, but you're not important. That might not be the exact message that you're giving across, but that's the sense that it gives, is that I'm important, my needs are important and matter here, yours don't. What might be the possible outcome if we're communicating in that way is that people are less respectful of us. You know, they'll be less on board with whatever we're trying to communicate, and they want to avoid you, and they don't like being with you, and because you're not treating them with respect. What can happen to us is, if we're communicating in an aggressive tone and style, we can then start to have feelings of guilt and shame after that outburst, and then that can lower our self-esteem. When we're in an aggressive communication style, what we might be trying to do is control others, but that's not actually going to, again, earn that respect from that other person. And we might be trying to achieve what we need by putting other people down. And this can be really risky for recovery, because what it's doing is ultimately pushing people away. Aggression, it's kind of giving that push, that too hard description. The adjectives that might be used are things like dominating, pushy, angry, insensitive or bullying. We can all fall into this, we all do it. You might hear that and think, oh, that's not me. We all have probably done this at one point or another in our lives, of taking that aggressive communication, where you're starting to raise your voice and you're shouting over that other person. What that's saying is, my voice is important, yours isn't. Don't get me wrong, that other person might be shouting back at you, but then maybe that comes to the point where the communication is breaking down. But where we're ramping ourselves up to be heard, that's us coming across in that aggressive style. I need to be heard, I'm important, you need to listen to me. So it's that trying to maintain that control over that other person. It might be where we're almost taking that parenting and as I say, dominating type role. Moving on to the passive style, so on the opposite end, so this is described as being a too soft communication style. So how this would be described, the person ignores or doesn't openly express feelings, needs or ideas to the other person. They don't stand up for personal rights and allow the allow others to ignore their rights. So this is the sense of I'm not okay, but you're okay. I don't care about me, you're more important than I am. And as I say again at the beginning, this might have been a communication style that you've adopted because you needed to in a moment. The same with your aggressive communication style. These could have been survival tactics. I'm not taking away from that. But what this passive style does is it means that there's less respect from that other person. There's going to be respect from yourself, but if you're being passive and not respecting your own needs, that other person isn't going to respect them. What can likely happen is people will take advantage of you because you've maybe not got boundaries in place and consequences and following through with. So it's the saying, isn't it? If you give somebody an inch, they can take a mile. What that leaves you maybe feeling is anger, resentment and hurt. You feel like you're being taken advantage of here, and that can make you feel lower in self-esteem, similarly to the aggressive communication style. Also, you can see it allows others to take control of you. So if we look at the aggressive communication style that we spoke about, where somebody wants to take control, and the passive communication style, where you're maybe more likely to be taken control of. And then that can mean that you're rarely achieving your desired goals and what your outcomes want to be. That can be risky ultimately for you because you're more living by other people's demands and not living by your own. So the adjectives that are used to describe the passive communication style include anxious, inhibited, pushover, submissive and wimp. And they might be, again, similar to the aggressive ones, they might be hard to hear those. This might be a communication style that you've fell into. And we'll come on to talking a bit more about what changes you can make if you feel you want to. So the last style to talk through is assertive communication. So this is the just right. It's a little bit like the Goldilocks. She's had all the different porridges, but she's come to the assertive communication, and this is the right one. Or it feels the right one, it feels more comfortable. And it feels more comfortable because we're expressing our needs, ideas and wants that respect ourselves but respect others as well. And we stand up for our personal rights in a way that respects ourselves and others. So what you'll see here is this idea of I'm okay, you're okay, I care about myself, but I also care about you and your needs as well. And we're both important in this interaction, relationship and communication here. So if we're going into the assertive communication, what could be some of the potential outcomes? We're likely to invite more respect from the other person because we're respecting ourselves first and foremost. People are going to value being with you. They know where they stand with you in terms of what you need and want from them. And you've got generally a good feeling from your relationships because you're communicating your needs, and that can often bring an increased sense of self-esteem. And you're ultimately likely to achieve more of your goals. You know where you're going, you know what your needs are. You're maybe hearing from other people what their thoughts and views are, but you're also listening clearly to yourself as well. And this can be, this communication style is good for recovery because it's going to enhance your relationships. As I say, people are going to know where they stand with you, and they're going to want to offer that support where possible. So how we might describe assertive communication is open, honest, direct, respectful and considerate. So next we're going to just talk briefly about what ways that we can go about avoiding certain communication styles and as I say, maybe moving more towards an assertive communication style. So to summarise, the aggressive communication style is somebody who expresses their rights, feelings and ideas at the expense of others. So what we can do to try and avoid that communication style is to avoid a tone of voice that's sarcastic, mocking or threatening. Where you're talking down to somebody, it's not going to be particularly nice. It's not nice to be on the receiving end of that. So it's not nice to be dishing that out. Avoiding violent outbursts and yelling or screaming. It is okay to have an angry emotion, but it's how you express that to the other person, how you let that out. If you're tending to find that anger is building up and it is coming out in violent outbursts or resulting in shouting and screaming and yelling, you need to put the brakes on before it's getting to that point, okay? You need to be taking that step back if you're recognising you're going up those steps, because that isn't okay where we're resulting in violent outbursts, because that's not respecting that other person's safety. Or where we're also given intimidating gestures, finger pointing, glaring, we're appearing quite nasty in our actual body language. That can come across quite threatening as well. Another thing, and we'll come on to listening, but where you're interrupting the other person, talking over them, as I was saying earlier, where you're wanting your voice to be heard, or you're silencing others by telling them to shut up. It's rude, but you're wanting your voice to be heard. So it's not respecting the other person. Other things to avoid are blaming and name calling. It's so easy to get into this. It's so easy it's your fault. If you hadn't done this, I wouldn't be feeling like that. That isn't really helpful, because then we start arguing about something else then, and then it's a blame game. And if we're name calling, that's where we're really saying something to try and hurt that other person. We're likely to then regret it afterwards. So avoid blaming, name calling, and avoid putting that other person down or making jokes at that other person's expense as well. So moving on to the passive communication style. So just to recap, this is where you're not expressing your rights, feelings and ideas. Ways to avoid this communication style. So communicate with more confidence. So you might be quite hesitant and unsure in your tone of voice. So being quite confident in speaking clearly and loudly, where not too loudly, but where people can hear you and what you're saying. Avoid looking down and talking away and walking away from people. Really try and maintain that eye contact with that other person. It's really important to express your ideas and opinions and what your needs are. So getting a bit more comfortable with doing that is really important. Don't cover up how you actually feel. That's that classic, yep, I'm okay, that's absolutely fine. When underneath it's not, because then comes that anger and resentment, and it just becomes an unresolved emotion. So don't cover up how you're really feeling. Here's your I statement. So I feel X, Y, and Z because of this. Avoiding self-blame and put down. So saying, oh, it's my fault because of so-and-so leaving home. It's my fault that he's gone and done this. It's not. Let that other person take responsibility for what has happened where they need to. Don't blame yourself for it. And avoid this sort of mumbling and speaking in a monotone voice, even just with your body language. So when we were saying earlier about the aggressive body language, where it's maybe sort of leaning over somebody and it's that sort of threatening, intimidating, avoid sort of that hiding in, standing with your shoulders back, open arms, and open to that communication where possible. It's simple things like that can help you to project your voice that bit more. So then lastly, the assertive communication style, which as we said earlier is the right, it's the just right communication style. So this is where we're able to express our rights, feelings, ideas, and respect the rights of others. So we're going to try and work towards this communication style, and how we can do that is, as we've talked about, is having a level, well-modulated voice that is clear, that the other person can hear very well, because that's the important thing as well. It's not just about what you're saying, it's the ears that it's going into. So can they actually hear what you're saying? So being really clear in your communication, having good facial expressions and gestures that match your mood and your words. So it's that classic example when somebody asks you maybe, how are you doing, and you're not okay, but you're like, yeah, I'm fine. Yeah, fine, totally fine. That doesn't really match your mood. Your mood and your body language is telling you, actually, I think this person's a bit annoyed, they're a bit angry, but what they're telling me is that they're fine, they're okay. It doesn't match up to their words and their mood. So thinking about how am I actually feeling and communicating that. So speaking up for yourself, I feel, I think, I believe, to share what that is like with whoever you're communicating with. Having good eye contact can be really, really important. It's not where we're like fixated on the other person, but if we're giving good eye contact, what that's demonstrating is that we're listening to that other person. Communication is a lot, it's massively about listening. And if that other person is maybe noticing, well, actually their eyes are wandering, they're on their phone, they're looking outside, that doesn't give the message that you're listening to that other person. So look at the person that you're talking to, and get to a level place. If they're sitting down, try and sit down with them, or if they're sitting on the floor, try and sit down or stand up, so that you're a level eye contact with them. So as I said, speak up for yourself, what you're feeling and what you're thinking, what you need, and avoid blaming others. So for example, you make me feel angry because you have done this. Avoid doing that. Avoid telling people what they should be doing, or what you think they are. Avoid all of that. So what I'd like you to do is think about a time when you've communicated really well. What was it that went well for you? And what communication style do you think you were in that time? Was it aggressive? Was it assertive? Was it passive? And then I also want you to think about a time when communication didn't go so well. Perhaps the communication broke down completely. What was the reasons for that? What led to the communication not going well? And again, what communication style do you think you fell into? Was it aggressive, passive, assertive? And then lastly, think about what is your communication style. So what style do you most often communicate from? Then you might be going from a mixture. That's okay. You might think, okay, I want to try and work towards more of the assertive communication style. That's great. You might already find that you're mostly communicating from the assertive style, which is brilliant. Okay. At the end of the day, the fact that you're watching this video and you're thinking about your communication and you're wanting to work on that is brilliant within itself. So keep working on it. It's not about getting it perfect by any means, but well done for working on your communication. I hope you found this video helpful. There's also a video on communication tips, which I'd recommend you watch, because it could just give you some further ideas that'll help you communicate in a way that works for you and also works for others. Alright, thanks for watching and take care.